Coming up on today's Cowboys Report with Tom Downey, that's me, and producer Chris behind the scenes, we're talking cornerbacks. Nick Harris with some noteworthy insight as I think one of the best Cowboys beat reporters out there, and an update on Stephon Gilmore. Because we're talking corners, I want you guys to grade the current Cowboys cornerback room. I don't know if they have an I for injured. I actually don't hate that one either, but we'll do the normal grading scale, A, B, C, D, or F. Sound off in the comments of today's video. Latest on Gilmore is, it's all social media based, right? Juanyeh Thomas, who I think is a great follow on Twitter because he's never afraid to start stuff, tweeted out he's talked to Stephon Gilmore, tweeting this out. We got both tweets up here. The bottom one, great talks with the OG always, tagging Stephon Gilmore, and then Gilmore responds. I think most Cowboys fans had the same reaction. I mean, he's going to come. Gilmore's going to happen because he's talking to Juanyeh Thomas. I think there is a good mentor relationship there between Gilmore and Juanyeh Thomas, who is obviously going to be him as a key safety. Look, I don't know how much, if at all, to really read into this, but I do think it is at least worth mentioning because the Cowboys have a need at corner. Gilmore's a free agent. Gilmore likes the Cowboys. He never wanted to leave in the first place. He fills the stopgap need pretty well. He's still, I think, a serviceable piece in the secondary. I think it's at least worth mentioning. I don't think it means anything guaranteed other than, I think those two have talked. Juanyeh's implied he's tried to get Gilmore to come back. I don't even know if it's a Gilmore interesting as it is so much do the Cowboys want to make that move right now? They might be far more inclined to wait for the first 2 weeks or so of training camp and maybe even get through the Rams joint practice and see how things are looking on that front before they potentially explore a veteran corner option like Stephon Gilmore. But if you ran the Cowboys, what would you do? S for you'd sign Stephon Gilmore, P for you pass, even just for now. Sound off in the comments of today's show. I thought Nick Harris had a lot of good stuff in his cornerback depth chart piece for the Star Telegram, so I want to break down several key elements of it. We won't go everything, but a lot of the core pieces there. Beginning with the Trevon Diggs injury status. Here's what Nick Harris wrote. While there is still a realistic chance that Trevon Diggs is fully cleared from his off-season knee surgery in time to play in Week 1, the expectation remains that he will most likely miss the first 4 games after a brief stint on the injured reserve list. Look, Trevon Diggs has said he wants to be back in Week 1. I love that's his mindset. Love that that's his goal. You haven't really heard that very much from other media. Brian Broaddus had said they're going to know more in mid-August if he's going to be able to go Week 1, which makes me think he's not going to. But I do think this report from Nick Harris that there is a chance of it is a really good thing. If you had, even worst case, right, or worst case in this scenario, if you told me Trevon Diggs is back for Week 4, I would take that right now in a heartbeat. I'm just yep, I'm in, sold. That. I think that's a really good outcome for the Cowboys and for Diggs to only miss a handful of games. The fact that Harris says it is a chance he's able to go in Week 1 it does give me hope. Because I still don't really know what the timeline, what the recovery process is really like for this injury for Diggs. It's a unique one. Noah Brown had it, but he had more time to recover from relative to when he had the surgery. The sooner Trevon Diggs is back, the better. I know not all of you guys like him and the tackling issues are real. You need him. He's still a playmaker in the secondary. He might not ever put up the 21 PB, 11 INT year he had back in 2021, but he's going to make plays on the football for you. And if you can stop the run overall, Diggs could be an impact piece. And given your other corners, I do think you need him out there. So I feel better today having read that from Nick Harris. So how many games total, I should say, will Trevon Diggs end up missing this year? Let me know in the comments section of today's show. Let's go to another injured corner, then we'll get to another one after that. Josh Butler is still recovering from his torn ACL he suffered back on Thanksgiving. Nick Harris reports that, quote, near the midway point of the season is the rough return timeline for Butler. And then, once he gets cleared, likely outcome is he goes to the practice squad, and then, if injuries happen, he gets called back up, but then he, gets his way back onto the roster if the Cowboys have other injuries or other bad play. But that was an awesome story last year. He kind of flashed coming, after being, we got to try something else at corner guy, and it was positive there. He's I doubt with the ACL and Thanksgiving playing corner. I would agree with Nick. It's probably not going to be till the midway point of the season. Cowboys could always try to IR stash him if they wanted to as well, but maybe you can get him through the practice squad and then keep him there and let him grow. And if someone like a Caelen Carson, a Mukuamu, a Booth, whoever else on the back end of the roster isn't playing well, or if there's an injury, Butler could be the guy that ends up getting a shot. The 4th of July is almost here, and the Cowboys 4th of July gear is available at chatsports.com/Cowboys4th. Link will be in the comments section and the description of today's show. That's chatsports.com/Cowboys4th. What better way to celebrate the 4th of July? It's America's Day with America's team. Let's go to Shavon Revel now, the other injured Cowboys corner. He's working his way back from his torn ACL. The expectation does remain, whether it's maybe not day one, but early on, midway, worst case, in training camp, he is cleared and will return. I could very much see the Cowboys taking a extra cautious approach on Revel and starting him on the PUP list, but then bringing him back, a handful of days in, which would not be the first time we've seen that happen for the Cowboys. Worth mentioning, as we had before, that reported setback that was pre-draft, kind of fairly early on in his recovery, so nothing to be overly concerned about there. Revel was, outside of one big play he allowed, was off to a really good start. He's got all the traits the Cowboys like in their corners. He's long, he's tall, he's got great straight line speed, he's athletic. He hasn't played a lot of corner, which I do think still kind of puts him in the developmental category. He was a crazy story. He was working Amazon night shifts before he got the chance to go try out for ECU, get the scholarship off, everything else there. So I am excited about Revel long term, but I'm also cautious to presume he's going to end up being an instant impact player. I think it might be a bit of a process, especially coming off the injury. I think the ideal outcome is at some point this season, whether it's week 7 or week 15 or whatever, he emerges as a starter, or at least a part-time starter, how you want to count the nickel role for the Cowboys this year. You think that happens? Y for yes, N for no. Let's go to the back end of the roster / depth chart / still making the team. Nick Harris listing Izzy Mukuamu as safe on the roster. Said he could even start early on, especially if you're not ready to play Revel yet. If Diggs is not healthy, that would leave Deron Bland, Kaiir Elam, and then an open spot for that third corner. Maybe it could be Izzy Mukuamu. He's kind of bounced around all over the secondary over the course of his career. He was an outside corner at South Carolina, which is where I wanted to play him. He did play some safety as well. I had him graded over Nashawn Wright coming out, which I think is a win for me in the end, since he's still in the league. Izzy is. And, every time he gets a chance to play, he tends to show something. So I kind of would like to see him do something, get a chance this year. There were 4 safe corners that Harris listed in his depth chart breakdown, not including hurt guys like Trevon Diggs and Josh Butler. Deron Bland, Kaiir Elam, Israel Mukuamu, and Shavon Revel. The first 2 starters are going to be Bland and Elam. Might do a more in-depth piece on Elam later on. So who starts in week 1? IM for Israel Mukuamu, SR for Shavon Revel, or O for it's somebody else. Maybe you think it's a Caelen Carson. Maybe it's a free agent like Stephon Gilmore. Maybe Diggs is healthy. Let me know in the comments of today's show. Now, not on that safe list there was Caelen Carson, the day 3 pick last year, who I was excited about. I thought the Cowboys got good value. He wasn't good last year. Now, he's coming off of his own shoulder injury. He's was rehabbing that. He should be good to go for training camp for the start of that. The implication here from Nick, and I'm inclined to agree with it, was if he'd put 5 on the safe list, Caelen Carson would have been the 5th. That he is the most likely to make the roster, but he's got to be better this year. And he's young. He is talented. I'm not overly concerned about it, but I'm not banking on him being a breakout player, so to speak. There were 3 other players in the on-the-bubble category. Sorry, Bruce Harmon. You didn't. Troy Pride, you didn't make it there. C.J. Goodwin's a special teamer. Kamon Hall, Robert Rochelle, and Andrew Booth Jr. So, assuming you take the first 4 guys, that means there's at least room for one more player there. And I would lean that's Caelen Carson. I think he's the favorite to be cornerback 5. I do think that Dallas could take 2. That they could take 6 corners, not really including C.J. Goodwin as his own special piece. But CB6 might only last until Trevon Diggs returns. And at that point, whether there's an injury or whatever, the Cowboys could cut somebody. I think they might go a little bit, make some roster adjustments. They're going to have to at some point with some of those injured guys coming back. So, we've got you covered on all things Dallas Cowboys. We'll talk about the other corners here in a second. Hit that sub button if you haven't already. YouTube.com/@CowboysTV. Don't want to rank these guys, but I think Kamon Hall's got a chance to do something. He was playing pretty well. He was a dark horse to make the Cowboys roster last year, and then he got hurt down the stretch and just kind of hung out on the practice squad, got some special teams call-ups. In fact, if the Cowboys do carry 6 corners, that 6th guy has to play special teams. So Kamon Hall stands out there. Robert Rochelle has played a lot of special teams over the course of his NFL career. And I do think we're at about the end of Andrew Booth's time in Dallas. Unless he takes a significant step forward, I am inclined to think, as he learns his third defensive coordinator in less than essentially a year, really. I am inclined to think that Booth is probably closer to on the outside looking in than being that 5th or 6th corner.